I'm just going to press on and get started because it's beautiful Sunday morning here. So as soon as I finish this, I'm going to go out for a walk. So I'm very keen to talk about weight loss as a topic. There's so much information out there that I think it can be really confusing. So I just want to share with you my perspective and how I would go about it as a nutritionist. And the things that I found really effective over the last couple of years, and I'll share with you some of the case studies that I've got as well. So let me share some pictures so that you're not looking at me all the time. Help you follow what I'm talking about. Okay, so the sorts of things that we see on social media can be confusing, can be amusing, or I can find it pretty frustrating. So these are just some of the things that I picked off the other day. So things advertising low-calorie cereal. So it's only 116 calories in Cocoa Pops, but 30 grams is about 4 tablespoons. So this really would be for a small child. You then see lots of high protein meals. This is what you should do. Some slightly strange combinations. I'm not sure that I would eat fried eggs and watermelon, but maybe something different. You see some things that are portrayed as healthy, like by Slimming World Diet Cola chicken. I wouldn't recommend anybody to be drinking Diet Cola. I drink it occasionally, but why would you be cooking with it? Lots of recipes about batch cooking, which can be a great thing. And then lots of information about GLP-1 and the medications. And it's really difficult to filter through. There's lots of new information coming through there. What's opinions and what's backed with facts and research. And then some really amusing ones, like the one in the top right-hand corner with crazy woman trying to do something. So let me try and navigate this through for you. Because when it comes to weight loss, I would say there's not a miracle cure. There's not a golden bullet. But we really can work out what's right for you. So there's different ways of approaching it. And often people come to me to say, I used to cut my calories, do some exercise, and weight would fall off me. And that's not working anymore. Why is it not working? And some people try things and they're yo-yo dieting. Other people have never had to diet before, and then as they reach later life, then they find that the weight's gone on. What can they do about it as their health becomes more important to them? So I'm going to talk to you about 5 different options. And then after that, I'm going to talk about metabolism testing, which can be really helpful to inform us about what's happening in our body and what might be right for our body. And then touch on supplements, because I think there's an awful lot of information out there, but let's look at what's actually could be effective. So when I think about weight loss, I think it's really important to think about it from a holistic view. It's not just a quick win of focusing on food. We need to think about what's happening with our emotions, how are they linked with the way that we feel about ourselves, the way that we feel about food, the way that we eat. But it is very important to think about food, how much we're eating, what we're eating. But as well as that, we need to think about our life format. So if we're a young mum with children, then that's a different scenario than someone who's retired and got more time on their hands. And then the last thing is thinking about movement, because as well as looking at our mental well-being, our food choices, then we need to make sure that we're exercising. But depending on your profile, you need to make sure that you choose the right movement for you. So for some people, HIIT exercise can be really important because you're burning lots of calories. But for other people, say you've got a profile with high stress, then actually HIIT exercise is the worst thing you can do. And you need to think about more calming exercise. So that could be yoga, Pilates, or walking. And all these things are linked together. So what we need to do is to not just focus on one area, but try to bring these things together. But equally, you don't need to do everything all at once. One thing can lead to another and lead to another. So when we're thinking about mental, emotional, and behavior changes, this can be really bespoke for you. And this is something that we often think, I want to lose weight. Right, I'll sign up for Slimming World. I'll go on my Fitbit. I'll monitor my calories. But maybe before we do that, we need to think about where am I at the moment? What's happening with my sleep? What's happening with my appetite? Where am I at with stress? Because we can really push our bodies into trying to lose weight, but sometimes these are some of the things that may be holding us back. And as well as thinking about how do some of these things apply to you, and then what do you need to do about that alongside some of the food changes you may be making, then maybe you need to do some emotional work alongside that, just to make sure that it all comes together and it complements each other. Because if you lose weight in the short term and maybe one of these things apply to you, then you may not be able to sustain the weight loss that you managed to achieve in the first place. And this is something I'm studying a lot about at the moment, and I'm starting to work with people to not only help them with their eating, but help them with their emotions around that eating, or looking at the hormones that are associated with appetite, and if they're out of whack, what can we do about that? And I'll come on and talk about that in a bit more detail. But fundamentally, that second point on the diagram, food does really matter. The food choices that we're making and the eating routines, and making sure that we're not following a fad diet that means we're eating foods that we're not enjoying, that we're taking into account our tastes and our lifestyles, and the texture's important to you. Because food is really important. We need it for energy, we need it for mind and mood. But also I saw somebody on Friday who's had major surgery a couple of months ago. So there's no point in thinking about a diet. It's more important to focus on renewing and repairing our body, and then we can come on to weight loss later on. Food really matters to how we regulate our body and help it work properly. And I like to think about it as a cake. You need all the right ingredients. And if there's something missing, then that cake doesn't work properly. So if you forget to put the sugar in, it doesn't taste very nice. If you forget to put the eggs in, it doesn't rise properly. You use the wrong flour, again, it sinks in the middle. So it's the same thing. When we're trying to help our body to work properly, we need all these different ingredients. We need some protein, we need some fiber, we need some carbohydrates, we need some fruit, we need some vegetables. And if some of those things are missing, or if our body's got depleted over time, then it becomes problematic. And the other thing I should mention here is sugar is a really big challenge in our society these days, and it can be addictive. And I do see that on a weekly basis. And the additives that we get in food can dysregulate the way that our body works and the way that our mind works. So when we're thinking about weight loss, there's a number of things that we need to take into consideration. So let's walk through what each of the options are, and then maybe you can think about what option might be right for you. So the first option that I start with is looking at the quality and quantity of food that somebody's eating. So you can see in the top picture, if somebody is eating pizza and burgers and soft drinks and too much cake and chocolate and cookies, it's very common in the society that we live in now that that's the sort of foods that we're eating. We get up in the morning and we just have maybe don't have anything. Then we have a slice of pizza at lunchtime and McDonald's on the way home. Whereas actually, what we need to do is to shift from those foods that are calorie dense, intense nutrients, that our bodies suck up the calories from those foods, and shift on to a more healthy, balanced diet of proper foods. So winding out the sugar, winding out the packaged foods and replacing it with still tasty foods, meat, fish, eggs, beans, lentils, and those sorts of things. And then looking at the quality and quantity of food. So you can see on the bottom left-hand corner, the sort of thing that you would go to a carvery and have a great big, enormous plate full of food, double Yorkshire pudding, big slices of meat, lots and lots of roast potatoes. I actually found it hard to find a picture of a roast dinner that had 50% vegetables and a more moderate portion. Um, so the first thing to think about is if somebody has a very unbalanced diet, then there's a really great opportunity to transition those foods from um, nutrient dense, lots of additives, lots of sugar, lots of fats, to whole foods. And that just doing that, not changing the quantity of food, but changing the type of food, can make a significant difference. And then helping somebody understand what's the right quantity of food for them. So the example I'd give you is Patrick. So you may have seen this on my social media. So Patrick was a lorry driver, great big guy, great personality, very, very social. And I was working with Patrick over about an 8-month period, I think. And Patrick had a terrible diet to start with. He knew that he'd get to work, he'd have some cornflakes, some toast, whatever was available in the canteen. He'd stop by the roadside, he'd get a burger, then he'd carry on working. And then at night he'd get something on the way home, some pizza, some fish and chips. And that was just the way he ate. And he wasn't used to cooking at all. So what I did with Patrick was design a meal plan. And I gave him a shopping list, and he went to Aldi and he literally bought everything on that shopping list. And he was an all or nothing person, I have to say. He took that shopping list, and then for 3 months, he worked on this meal plan. And he shifted from eating the diet that I talked about to eating whole foods. And, each week I'd have a call with him and he'd say, "No, I'm not hungry. I bought the chicken you said, I bought the salmon. I'm drinking smoothies. I'm absolutely on it." But after 3 months, we kind of reached a plateau, and then we moved from this option to another option. But over 9 months, Patrick lost 6 stone. And he just looks like a completely different person, but he's still got the same great personality that when we first met. But what I'd say here is it's not just about quality and quantity of food, but maybe thinking about where do you go shopping, how do you prepare foods? Are you somebody who likes recipes and wants to keep it interesting? Or like Patrick, do you just need something very simple, very straightforward? But this is where I would start. Make sure that you've got this option in place. But if you're somebody who's already eating the right foods and eating a reasonable quantity, then it can be very confusing about, well, I'm doing the right things, so how do I lose weight? So let me talk to you about some of the other options. So when Patrick plateaued, this was the option, this is where we went next. It isn't something that I would recommend in the long term, is to go to a low-carb diet. And basically what this does is makes your body work harder. You have broadly the same quantity of foods, but you switch the type of foods that you're eating. It can be quite difficult to get used to, so you do need to be pretty organized. You really need to like fruits and vegetables because a lot of the carbohydrates take out. You put fruits and vegetables in instead. So it's not for everybody, but if you're somebody who likes to eat regularly and likes to have a good quantity of food, and that's important to you, then this is a really good option. So instead of having toast and cereal for breakfast, you have fruit and yogurts, or you might have eggs and vegetables. For lunchtime, you go away from the traditional sandwich and you start having soups and salads, maybe wraps or a wrap or an open wrap, and swapping potatoes for vegetables. So you can see it is important that if this is the option for you, that you like vegetables. And then you take out rice and pasta and potatoes, and you swap that for protein and more vegetables. So I did this with Carol. So Carol was somebody who, and this is where the emotional side things come into it. Carol had quite a difficult childhood. She was part of a very large family and food was very important. So she needed she needed to be sure that she had enough food. She wanted to feel full. So this was the right option for Carol because she was having lots of food. There was plenty of food on her plate. It was interesting, but it was just different types of food. And again, you'll see Carol on my social media. Carol's about 65, and she lost 3 stone over a year. And this just, she actually went on the low carb diet for 3 months, then came off it and then went on it again. So that was just the way we decided to do it for her. So this is one a lot, you'll see a lot in social media. It's one I'm a big fan of. I practice fasting for myself. So if I put on weight, this is the right option for me. But there's lots of different options, and I think that's where people can get confused. So 16-8 would generally be the most, excuse me. So fasting is where you organize the food to have a longer period where you're not eating. So for many people, 14-10 or 16-8 can be the most practical things. So if you have your dinner at 7 o'clock at night, you go through, you go past breakfast time, have no breakfast, and you go through to lunchtime. Or maybe late morning, you might have a breakfast late morning or a snack late morning and then lunch. So instead of going from 7 o'clock at night for your evening meal and then having breakfast 12 hours later at 7 a.m., you're essentially extending the amount of time that your body has no food. And that's when the body then starts to go and find the fat stores, converts those fat stores to use them. So for most people, that it can work for many people, but for somebody like Carol, this wouldn't work. She would get very anxious about not eating. For people who get hungry or have problems with blood sugar regulation, this isn't the right thing. But in many ways, it's a very simple way because you don't have to think about different foods. You don't have to think about different recipes. You just think about the timing in which you eat. And there's many health benefits of fasting. So I would try and fast once a week, and I find that good for health. If you want to do it for weight loss, it's very important that you switch it on and off. Because if you start fasting and you're continuously fasting, then actually your body adjusts to that, resets your metabolism, gets used to it, and you'll find you start losing weight and then it plateaus off. So if you've got more weight to lose, then make sure that you're switching that fasting on and off. And again, that's very personal. So if you want to lose weight gradually, which for most people is the right thing, you may fast for 3 days and then have breakfast for 3 days, for 4 days, sorry. So switching that fasting on and off. But again, there's different options. So for some people, if your body gets used to fasting, then you may choose the OMAD option, which is to have 1 meal a day. So that can push the fasting to come in and be more effective again. So when I worked with Lynn, for example, we started on 16-8 fasting. And it worked really well for her because she found she's a busy PA. So she could continue to eat her lunch and her dinner as she normally would. And then she'd get up in the morning, distract herself. Once she got to work, she was really busy. And before she knew it, she got to lunchtime and she's absolutely starving. So it worked very well for Lynn. For a couple of months, we were gradually losing 2 or 3 pounds a week. And then it started to plateau because the body started to get used to it. So then what we did was 3 weeks of 24-hour fasting. So having 1 meal a day, just trying that. And it kick-started a change. And then we went back to the fasting that she'd been doing before. So sometimes you need to take the fasting and do some different things with it. And I've got a lot of experience of doing different things with different people. So, for example, for some people, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. They really look forward to it. So, cutting out breakfast really doesn't work for them. So, what I do in that situation would be to still have breakfast, to have the main meal at lunchtime, and then from a snack in the middle of the afternoon, and then fast all through the evening and through the night until they get their breakfast in the morning. So, this is an option that you need to think about. Is it right for me? What's my relationship with food? So, if you've got a difficult relationship with food or you've got diabetes and you need to watch your blood sugar, then this may not be the option for you. Then you need to think about what's the right timing for fasting. So, are you somebody who can shift out your breakfast, or would it suit you better to lose your dinner? But in whatever the case is, whenever you break your fast, you need to make sure that you're having a proper meal at the end of the fast, because the risk is if you just have a couple of biscuits or a banana, then your body really wants more food and you can end up overeating when you break the fast if you don't manage that properly. So, again, I can work with you on that. Um, so fasting is a really good option, but I'm thinking about whether it's the right thing for you. And then the other two options, it may surprise you that I'm putting these up here, is weight loss medication or bariatric surgery. Now, these are significant decisions to decide to go down this route. It can be life-changing for many people, but it's very important that before you make these choices, you understand what it involves, and what it means for you. Um, and if you decide to explore these options, then make sure that you understand what's involved, and you get the support, not just for the surgery or the medication, but how do you prepare for what's going to happen? How do you get the support you need during that time? And either after the surgery or after the medication, how do you make that transition afterwards? Because as you can see in the pictures on the bottom, it's really important to think about what type of food am I eating. So in both of these options, you're eating a lot less food and that's why you're losing weight. But then it's really, really important that you eat really hyper nutritious food that's very nutrient dense. So one of the ladies I'm working with, who's on Monjaro medication, she's been on that for 2 months now. She started to find that her nails are breaking. She's starting to get cracks around her lips, and that's all signs of nutrient deficiencies. So, as I said at the beginning, food is really important. So, if you decide one of these options is right for you, you need to make sure that you're getting the right foods in the small quantities that you're eating. So, maybe you need to work with with a nutritionist to understand that. The other thing that's really important is that you exercise properly, because when you lose weight very quickly in these options, then you're not just losing fat, you're in danger of losing muscle as well. If you're losing muscle, then that can affect your mental health as well as your physical health. It affects how you look, um, but also in the longer term, it will affect how your body works and your ability to be able to move and function properly. The other thing that's really important is that you understand your emotional relationship with food. So some of the people I work with, uh, say for example, I worked with a lady who'd had bariatric surgery abroad, and she really struggled when she came back with not just the foods that she was eating, but she was a very social person and she was used to going out with her friends. And she said to me, "Well, we're going out for pizza tonight. What shall I have?" And I was like, "Well, you can't. You can just have a tiny portion. Like less than a slice of pizza." She said, "Well, how's that going to work? Everybody's going to be sitting there eating, and that's a really difficult thing to get your head around." Similarly, if you go on weight loss medication, then it does dampen the appetite. But then when you come off that medication, if you haven't thought about rehabilitation and the emotions that you have around food, then when you come off the weight loss, there's some evidence that you just definitely put it back on again. And then the last thing to think about is, how does your body change, and how do you manage that? Um, Either in the short term as you're going through these options, or in the longer term, how do you help your body readjust and reshape itself in order to manage this? So I can't help with the medication, I can't help with the surgery, but what I can help with is, what foods should you be eating? How do you manage your emotions around that food? And how do you manage your body to make sure that it's able to function properly? So these are options, they're very radical options. Just make sure that you understand what you're going into. So I've talked about the 5 different options around weight loss. What I'd now like to touch on is troubleshooting. So sometimes people try one of these options and it's not working. Why is it not working? And this is how I troubleshoot this: is looking at two different two different pieces of analysis, is looking through this and profiling you and seeing if any of these areas apply to you. Because if you've got nutrient deficiencies, or if you're not sleeping properly, or if you're smoking, or you're eating a lot of sugar or sweetness, then these things may be holding you back from losing weight. So essentially, you're fighting against your own body, and you may need to rebalance some of these things to make sure that you're able to lose weight. And commonly, I find it's probably not one thing, but it's between 2 and 5 things that I find with someone. What I do is talk through their lifestyle, their background, what they're eating now, and find that one or more of these things might apply. So you can see the different things on there. Um, and then the other things that might apply are things around food sensitivity. So if you've got a dairy intolerance, then your body will be really struggling with digestion. It will struggle to metabolize fat, and therefore you could be reducing the amount of food that you're eating, increasing your exercise. But if you don't understand some of the underlying problems and fix those, then it will hold you back from losing weight, and your metabolism will be focused on dealing with some of these things rather than the weight loss that you're pushing it towards. Equally, if your digestion's not working properly, you've got problems with constipation or diarrhea, then that can hold you back from losing weight. As can hormones, either thyroid, female hormones, even testosterone for men, can affect your ability to lose weight. There's also a lot of medications that increase the amount of weight. So if you're on some of those medications that are um, leading you to steroids, for example, that would be causing you to put weight on, then you need to work with a nutritionist and your GP to manage the medications and make sure that you're on the right option to enable you to lose weight in the right way alongside those medications. There's also some other challenges around food addiction. So if you focus on one of these options and you have got a problem with addiction to food, then we need to unwind that as part of the overall profile. And then a long history of dieting can be a complication as well. So the key thing is, if you're trying to lose weight and it's not working, then it'll be one or more of these things that are causing you a challenge and holding you back. So how can we understand a bit more about what's going on here? So there's actually a lot of tests that are available, and evaluations that you can do. So when it comes to emotional eating, there's a number of models that are based on psychology of eating, where you can understand what's happening here, how can I understand my emotions better, and what can I do about those emotions as well. If we're having lots of cravings, then often that can be due to deficiencies in our diet, or the one that we would commonly recognise is that we want chocolate before our periods start because our body is craving sugar to help us through that period. But there are other things that we may be craving foods for that may be a deficiency, which means we're overeating because we're giving the wrong food rather than the right food. Equally, if our hormones are imbalanced, as I showed on the last chart, then there's saliva and blood tests we can do to understand what's happening with your hormones. And it may be that we need to do some work to rebalance those hormones, or it may be that by understanding what's happening, you recognize that I can I can practice weight loss for 3 weeks of the month, but for the second week of the month, there's no point in doing it because my hormones are very, very high. I need to focus on helping my body through that period rather than force weight loss as well. And then we can do blood or stool tests around digestion and leaky gut and what's happening there and what might be holding you back from metabolizing the fat. If you've cut your intake and it's not releasing fat, then it may be something about your digestion, and we can get facts around that. Um, those are some of the more common tests that I do, but there are other things that we can look at as well. So when it comes to emotions and how's our mental health affecting our ability to lose weight, then we can profile your neurotransmitters and what's happening in those hormones as well. We can also do genetic testing. So we've known for a long time that genetics plays a part in the size we are and how we put on weight and how our metabolism works. But there's some really good tests now where we can properly understand that, and that helps us understand what's the right way of losing weight for you, and how do we lean on the strengths of your genetics as well as some of the challenges in those genetics. And then we can look at body composition and thyroid testing as well. So I guess my message here is sometimes it can be really frustrating to understand what's happening in my body. I feel really different to how I did a few years ago. I'm trying to lose weight for health reasons or to look how I used to a few years ago, and it's really frustrating me. So sometimes putting some facts behind that can be really helpful. And many of these tests you can get through your GP, but definitely I can do all of these tests as well. So supplements, please don't be drawn into the social media. There's no quick win of supplements that are going to help you lose weight, but there are supplements that, if your body is struggling with some of the things that I talked about around your metabolism, then there may be some supplements that can help bring your body into balance. And as it's in a better balance, then it will help you lose weight. So there are some, if your metabolism and energy is struggling, then it may be that you're missing some particular nutrients. So B complex or L-carnitine are some common ones around that. If you're struggling with cravings or appetite, then there's equally some specific nutrients around chromium and L-tryptophan that can be really applicable to you as well. In terms of managing hormones and blood sugar, then there's some helpful things there as well. And if your body's struggling with digestion and excreting the fat, then we may look at probiotics and digestive bitters around there as well. So my advice to you would be don't go into Holland and Barrett or online and buy lots of nutrients. I saw a lady 2 or 3 weeks ago, and she'd spent £130 on vitamins, and she needed about £40 worth of those, which would be applicable to her. And she just got drawn into, you need metabolism, you need magnesium for this, you need turmeric for this, and she just bought all of them. So it's important to find the right things for you, because otherwise you not only waste your money, but you can get disappointed as well. So just to sum up there, I would say to you, there's 5 different ways of losing weight. Um, and I guess the message I really want to say is think about what's right for you. And it may be one or more of those different options. And how can I help you do that? Well, Um, all the things that we've talked about, you would be able to talk those things through with me with an in-depth one-to-one consultation. So this is where I'd spend an hour with you, understanding what foods do you eat now, what's your digestion like, what's your hormone profile, what's your relationship with food, um, how did you eat as a child, how do you eat now, how had you lost weight before, is your digestion working properly? We work through all of those things and then we decide, I help you work out what's the right option for you, and give you the right advice to make sure that you can approach weight loss in a way that's very positive experience for you. And that may be enough for you. But if it's not enough for you, then I can help you with some more support over a 6-week period. And it may be for longer, but generally I find 6 weeks is a really good time to to get started and then get through to a rhythm and then tweak that in the fourth, fifth, sixth week to really personalize that for you, making sure that you've got meal plans, you've got the right food choices, and having a weekly call with you. And I'm doing a new collaboration that starts on 2nd of June. It's only available for people in the local Flintshire area, or Flintshire in Cheshire, doing a collaboration with Rob Paul. And what we're doing is a 6-week program which incorporates live circuit sessions, so movement, fitness, and meal plans and food choices as well. So it's a really great opportunity to bring together what foods you're eating, what's the right way for you to lose weight, and then how can you get that movement working as well. And do it in a way that's in a great community as well. People are doing this alongside you, and you get the support of 3 of us that are leading into that. So watch out for social media because there's more information starting to come out on that now. And then the last one, which is particularly important if you choose um, options 4 and 5, so around weight loss medication and bariatric surgery, but it may just be applicable to you. So if your challenges are around emotional eating and binge eating, then what I'm just starting to offer is a 12-week program to help you not just with the foods that you're eating, but the emotional side of eating as well, and the rehabilitation period. So there we're looking at strategies and tactics to stop emotional eating. How can we reset your relationship with food, retrain your brain with lots of psychological tools, and then have real strategies to essentially change the way you manage food and the way you feel about food. So I'm really excited about this. This was a missing piece on my journey so far, and I've recently done some training in this area. So there's a lot I can offer in this. So what next? I'm conscious I've been talking for quite a while, shared lots of information. Um, there's a QR code on there. I'd love you to book a 20-minute chat for me. We can talk about what might be the right option for you. And then maybe that's it. Or if you need more support, then we can take it from there. Thank you so much for the people that have been able to join. After this call, I'm going to be sending out lots of recordings. So, but this is an opportunity for people that are live on the call to ask some questions.